And it's really not about the final destination. For me, it's never been about that. It's been about the pursuit of learning and growing and building something that's beyond what I'm capable of building, on my own.
Leadership is everywhere. In our work, in our family, in our community. We see leaders by their actions. We know their legacy. This podcast is about leaders, people just like you, doing amazing things every day. I hope these stories inspire you, they motivate you, and they fuel your leadership legacy. My name is Vicki Guy. Welcome to Ignite. Hi, and welcome to Ignite. Our guest today reminded me that dragonflies have eyes that are bigger than their bodies, which reminds him how important it is to look for ways to continuously improve. Hiro Leung, owner and CEO of the Dragonfly Sushi and Sake Company, knows the dangers of complacency and overcomes it by revolving the company culture around Kaizen, a Japanese philosophy for continuous improvement. Hiro's need to continue evolving enabled Dragonfly to thrive for decades within a competitive restaurant business. So how has he done that? When we return, we'll hear some great stories from Hiro.
Hey IT pros, let IT Pro TV add food, drinks, and fun to your next meetup. Sysadmins, security groups, network admins, and more, tell us about your meetup and we may send you a meetup kit to make your meeting extra special. Your kit contains a gift card for refreshments, t-shirts, and stickers to give away, plus access codes for all of your group members to try IT Pro TV for free. Request a meetup sponsorship kit for your group today. Visit www.itpro.tv/events.
Welcome back. Today we're joined with Hiro Leung, the owner and the creator of Imagin Restaurant Group. Hiro, welcome to Ignite. How you doing?
Doing wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You are very welcome. Today we're going to talk a lot about restaurants. And, you have been in the restaurant industry successfully for a number of years. And I know that working and going to restaurants, I've never worked in a restaurant, but just going to restaurants, the lessons that we learn from the restaurant business can transcend into so many other parts of the corporate space.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm hoping we can dive into some of that today, just to get us started. But before we get there, I'm wondering, what made you decide to go into the restaurant business?
That's a very tough question and to start off with, but so I graduated from University of Florida 20 plus years ago. I won't say exactly how many pluses, but it's been in that vicinity. And like many college kids, I worked part-time in restaurants to make ends meet. Mm-hmm. And long story short, I was unemployed. I was on my way to go to Chicago for a job interview. And actually, I went to that job interview. And unfortunately, the person that was interviewing right after me had a resume stacked this long. So long story short, I didn't get hired. Uh-oh. So I ended up back in my college town, University of Florida, and I decided to open up a very small restaurant to make ends meet until I found a real job.
Okay.
And so that was 20 plus years ago, and I'm still looking for that real job.
Well, I think you have found it. So that restaurant today is Dragonfly Restaurants. You have one here in Gainesville, one in Orlando, so part of the the middle of Florida, and then most recently have opened one in the Miami area as well. Yep. So I'm pretty sure you're there to stay. I don't know if there may be a next chapter for you, but that has been a really interesting journey for you. And right. Moving, starting that small restaurant, thinking that was kind of a stepping stone for you. At what point did you say, I'm all in, versus I'm going to do this for a while and move on?
Yeah, I think from day one, I always knew that whatever we do in life, we just go at it 100%. Mm-hmm. And, and every day is just challenging. You learn to discover about yourself. You learn a lot about the restaurant industry. You uncover and you go through so much challenges. But ultimately, there's been a few common denominator that's just rung true to who I am. And 20 plus years later, I'm still kind of learning who I really am, and just kind of going strong. And it's really not about the final destination. For me, it's never been about that. It's been about the pursuit of learning and growing and building something that's beyond what I'm capable of building, on my own. So utilizing the team. I've got over 200 plus employees, and it just every day I walk into the office, I walk into the restaurant. It's going to school. It's all about learning
Yeah.
constantly. Yeah.
You mentioned that there's a couple things that kind of were like common denominators or denominators that taught you along the way. What were some of those?
Um, I think for it's okay. So in about year three, we decided that um, we had to make this restaurant work. Otherwise, go out and find a new job. And it is really my business partner and I. We really looked at ourselves and asked ourselves, who are we, and how do we elevate us from mediocrity to the next level? And some of those common denominators that really kept on coming up were, say, um, you know, pursuit of excellence, family. That was really important to us. Really, having that core meaningful relationships with the team as well as with our own family. Uh, the accountability that it takes, the communication that we need between the people, the culture. Kaizen is another one, which in my culture, which means continual learning. And so all of those themes just kept on popping up, and little did I know that it was the making of a culture.
Mm.
And so it's we were able to put those on from our minds onto a piece of paper and to really figure out how do you create that into not a not just a uh, you know uh, something that's beautiful on a wall, but so that the team and the people are truly living it, including our guests that are coming into the restaurant.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. You mentioned so many things. I want to come back to a couple of those in just a
oh
minute.
yeah.
But I'm wondering, from your perspective, what has made the difference? Let me tell you what I mean.
Yeah.
So, I know several people that have either wanted to start a business like a restaurant, or
Yeah.
have started a business like a restaurant, or it could be any small business at all. And after year one or two, have closed their doors.
Yeah.
And it's hard, especially now in the retail space and the restaurant space, to keep those doors open because there's so much competition. There has to
Oh
be
yeah.
a really good reason for people to come to your place, right? And so
Yeah.
your brand has to be super strong to be able to
Oh
do
yeah.
that. But you have pushed through that and expanded. You've stayed private. You're not owned by a large restaurant chain.
Yeah.
You've expanded into three major uh, cities,
Yeah.
and you're continuing to grow. What
Yeah.
has it been that's made the difference for you to be able to achieve that?
I think it's the continual pursuit. That's a great question. To really push and not be satisfied with where we're at. We started off with 20 years ago. We had 10 tables and when we bought our furniture at a flea market on a shoestring budget, and we knew that deep down inside, the restaurant name being Dragonfly, and if you look at the insect, the eyes are bigger than the body. Our vision had always been bigger than what we've had. And so it's really not being satisfied or being uncomfortable. Uh, and, you know, I always felt that if I felt too comfortable, something's wrong.
Mm.
And it's really pursuing and pushing. And ultimately, it's the people that we have that we've grown internally that we're able to really expand and do the things we're doing because I within the four walls, I know a lot of people say, hey, how do you find good help in the restaurant industry? We have people that are part-timers, we have kids that are making ends meet by just going to college and working here and there. How do you truly find people that we've been fortunate and we've been blessed to really find people that want to be in this industry and want a little bit more than just a serving job or a dishwashing job. And so, the great question. It's really been at the end of the day about our people. They've, hands down, have pushed myself to be uncomfortable and to continually learn. The word Kaizen keeps popping up, so that I don't fall behind and uh, really lead. And I realize that if I'm looking back, I've got 200 plus people just really looking for direction from me, and I wanted to make sure that I was adding value to every single one of the team member that I have.
Yeah. And that's a big responsibility.
Oh yeah.
Really, I mean, it is for them to look to you for that vision. I read on your website that you're the keeper of the brand,
Oh yeah.
right? And that's
Absolutely.
a pretty, I love that line. And it's
Yeah.
true. As the owner of the company, you are the keeper of the brand. And so what you just described to me is you have people in your team that are consistently challenging
Oh yeah.
perhaps the status quo.
Oh yeah.
And that's a good thing, right? So how do you find
Abs-
that balance between being the keeper of the brand and saying, okay, this is who we are,
Yep.
and allowing people to challenge you to make changes or evolve within the industry?
Oh, well, I mean, at the end of the day, as long as I surround myself with people that are constantly challenging me, and they know that I don't like people that are always just agreeing to what I say. And I mean, it's just one fast way to really get off off of our team is to really just be a yes man or a yes woman. And ultimately, what really guides me isn't Hero. What guides me are our core principles and our values that we have. And if I can share those with you,
Sure.
I know we talked about some of those in year 3 to 4. We talked about how what are the common denominators that got to where we were, but ultimately it was really we decided to create 5 of the cultural values that we as an employee and as leaders felt that should be our true north. And here's what it is. And we call it unique selling proposition, but at the top we have what's called we say this is how we differentiate ourselves. We're crafters of meaningful connection and artful flavors. And through that, we have 5 cultural values that lead up to that. And we expect every single one of our employees to know these. One is solve it. It's having a solve it mentality. For example, it means I proactively solve challenges with creative solutions. Number 2 is consider it done. Number 3 is celebrate memories. Number 4 is expand talent. And number 5 is embrace change. So all of these key cultural values came about through the challenges that we were going through. But every time we really focus back in on that, we thread everything that we do through those 5 cultural values. And that's pretty truly our litmus test. And to make sure that all these 5 values are living on a day-to-day basis, we have strategies that we use internally at the restaurant to make sure that those are constantly reminded. For example, we tell stories around those 5 cultural values. We also recognize people, because we all we want to water what we want to see. So if you really ask an average company, if there are employees out there just listening to this, if I ask you, do you feel like you're getting recognized too much? The answer is 9 times out of 10, there's not enough of that.
Yeah.
And so number 2, we always try to recognize people for doing any of those 5 cultural values. And number 3, we call it focused accountability. And so focused feedback. We give people feedback around those 5 cultural values. So throughout all those things, from focused recognition, from focused storytelling, and from focused feedback sessions, everything just revolves around those 5 cultural values. You asked me earlier, growing from one restaurant to two restaurant to three restaurant, and our future is to continually grow this restaurant brand. One of the culture values is to expand talent, uh, and for us that means I seek and nurture those who embody our Bushido. And Bushido basically is our cultural values. But every time we see somebody with a potential to grow and expand their talent, obviously you can only expand so much in one restaurant. So that kind of forced us to go find the funding and the resources to put that person into a new position. I'll give you a quick example. We have an example of what expand talent is. I proactively, I'm sorry, I seek and nurture those who embody our Bushido. We had a dishwasher who started with us, and he just showed so much talent that he wanted to, hey, Hiro, you don't have to pay me more. Can you let me prep on my days off? I'm like, oh, sure, why not? Free labor? Come on in. So he started prepping. He mastered that. And then I ended up paying him for that. And I said, okay, well, then he asked me, hey, do you mind if I started cooking on the hotline? And he's like, you don't have to pay me on that. On my days off, I'll come in. And so he mastered that, and I ended up paying him for that.
He's brilliant.
So next thing you know, anyways, long story short, he's running one of our restaurants, and really commanding, over 70 plus employees. And it's really the stories like that we share with our employees. So when I say focused storytelling, they understand what that means instead of just a little word on the wall. That's why those are extremely important to us.
Yeah. So you're living those 5 things, not just saying that this is what I stand for. So you're demonstrating that through time. And when I think about running a restaurant, there are things that we think about typically, like customer service, right? So how do you have good customer service, or just the technical part of running a business or running a restaurant, the food prep, the dishwashing, all of the. I probably, since I've never worked in a restaurant, I'm sure there's so many pieces that I don't even know happens to make sure that the food comes out amazing, and you're having to spend time training people on that stuff. How do you find time with your team to bring this other stuff in? Because I know a lot of companies, especially if they're operationally heavy, we spend a lot of time teaching and training in operations. But what you're talking about is a whole nother level of culture that you're infusing into that operation. How do you find the balance to bring that to your team?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're absolutely right. We can sit through seminars and people talk about culture this, culture that, and you got to go through like hours of training and separate type of I don't even know what they call it, but and plus, I mean, given my, in the restaurant industry, we have high turnover, and these are pretty much not career people. You have a lot of part-timers. And so you you ask an excellent question, and I struggle with it on a day-to-day basis. And you're absolutely right. But truly, if you really break this down into like 2 buckets, one is formal, method of rolling out culture, and one's informal method of rolling out the culture. I think those are both important. So when I say the formal part, I deliberately close the restaurant down on a certain day. And I forgo the top line revenues to make sure that I bring the whole restaurant in. Each restaurant has 70 plus, so with 3 restaurants and the corporate team, I've got over 200 employees. But we have a whole restaurant-wide meeting where every single person sits in and are taught these values, so that the formal part is taken care of. Yet the true magic really happens on the informal part. Being able to recognize as leaders that when you see some of these 5 things happen, when we have to reward people, and really like not just give them a sticker, but to really take care of them for demonstrating that. I'll give you a quick another example is let's see. I have so many to pick from my Rolodex, but solve it. I proactively solve challenges with creative solutions. In one of my restaurant, we were basically squeeze bottles, And one of my employees came up to me and said, "Hey, Hiro, I know you are really into this cultural value thing, and you guys taught me that that I should always learn to solve it, which is proactively solve challenges with creative solutions. Can you buy me can you spend $100 and buy me some spatula?" I'm like, "What do you mean spatula? You mean like that plastic thing in the end?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Can you buy that for me?" I'm like, "Well, what are you gonna do with the spatula?" He's like, "Well, I noticed that we're going through several hundred pounds of sauces a week, and every time I pour the bucket of sauce into the squeeze bottles, there's always some left over. It's like, what if we just use the spatula and scrape everything out, and pour it, get the last bit of it?" And he's like, "I actually went home and I did the Excel spreadsheet and I calculated that you'll be saving about $50,000 a year if you
What?
actually scraped every single piece of this sauce into the bottle." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. Are you really sure? Let me see the spreadsheet." So I took a look at it. I'm like, "Okay, for $200, you're getting me 50,000. You get a raise, buddy."
Yes. Yeah, the answer is yes. You can
So,
have it.
and to me, that action was awesome to really realize. But more importantly, I wanted to tell the whole restaurant and recognize that person publicly so that I can really share with the team the story, number one, but to know that actions like that really get recognized. And so, I went and we all gave him a big nice bonus and publicly presented it to that person, and we implemented that throughout the restaurant.
Yeah,
And so, yeah.
yeah. I just want to say I love that because, a lot of times coaching is so important in any organization, right? And how you coach people along to develop. But oftentimes we find things that are wrong and we try to
Oh, yeah.
fix them.
Oh,
What you're
yeah.
doing is you're looking for the good stuff and you're reinforcing the good stuff. And I find that that goes even farther sometimes than pointing out what someone's not doing well.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I mean, that's a great approach and it sounds like it's really been beneficial for you.
I think as leaders, we're just programmed, or even not as leaders, parents, leaders, citizens. uh, I think our world is filled with so much negativity. It's so much easier to find what we're not doing right, and we forget the things that we want to see. We want to water and see it grow.
Hmm.
But there's a flip side to everything, right? There's a yin and yang.
Hmm.
You tend, if you overwater, if all we do is recognize the good stuff, then how do you face the mediocrity things that in reality that we really see all the time,
Hmm.
and the hazard signs that we see in our businesses?
Yeah, especially if you're trying to always improve and get better, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. So I wanted to mention one thing, and I know this comes up in corporations a lot, and that's Kaizen. Using this principle to delight our customers.
oh, yeah.
And tell us a little bit about how you've been able to integrate that into delighting your customers, because I know you do.
um it for ours, it's the Kaizen is really, we use it to really talk about it internally. And we, at first, we talk about how we expect our employees to continually grow. uh, Yesterday I gave a pre-shift to the team and I said, "Hey, there's only two routes that we take. We either grow or we either
Give up.
decompose."
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's with everything in life. But the beautiful thing is that you get to choose which direction you want to go. And so for us, um, as leaders, we have book clubs, and we actually encourage our leaders and our team to take the time to really read and learn, but yet not only just do it by yourself, but to share with the team, uh, so that you're teaching each other, and you're really pushing your boundaries. And once again, it kind of goes to that embracing change. That's one of our cultural values, which is you know I courageously seek out and go out for like challenging situations and really just try to knock those down. And
Mhm.
so it's about going and really crossing those boundaries to learn and grow. And and for us, I mean, the restaurant industry is so competitive nowadays
Mhm.
that it's not okay just to um, give, if your hostesses just greet you and say hello, the menus are clean, you get your food on time. To be honest, all those are just to even playing the game. That gives you average and mediocrity. So you say, okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if you're just okay, uh, you're not wowing somebody. And if you're not wowing somebody, it's just mediocre. And unfortunately, mediocre nowadays, you're gonna get forgotten. And so you have to really go above that. And that's what Kaizen does to us. It's really freaking out. How do you really learn and grow past that? And for me, I've taught the employees and the team that, um, it's like if you just give this service that I just mentioned, you're going to go out of business. We're going to go out of business. You're not going to get a paycheck. What we have to do is we have to elevate and create um, what's called hospitality. So don't give service, give hospitality. Now, the difference basically is if you give service, it's very mechanical. Like I just mentioned, the hostess greets you, you get a clean menu, you get your food on time, you get your check, and you're out. That's just boring and just mediocre.
Yeah. You like that, but it won't make you crave to go back.
Exactly, because you won't remember, and it needs to stick in your mind after. And in order to so for someone to remember, you have to trigger the emotional part. And in order to get that emotional part, you have to really, really figure out ways to deliver hospitality. And really, the only way to do that is to really connect with the guest on a meaningful way. And you have to not only do what I just said, but you have to figure out ways to go above and beyond that. And that's where Kaizen comes into play. But for us, once again, I'll point it back to their culture. It's celebrate memories. For us, and when every time an employee has moments of those emotional celebrate memories, we tell stories around it, we recognize them, and we give people feedback around those things. A quick example is about 15 years ago, we had a guest that used to come in every Friday. And every time he walked in the restaurant, he had this obnoxious laugh. It was so loud, but it was just so trademark, uniquely David. And every Friday. Then one Friday, it was him and his wife and his kid. One Friday, they stopped coming in. And we didn't know why. But then the second Friday stopped coming in. Third Fridays, and so it just continued on for about 2 months. We ran into the wife, and then the wife said that David had contracted cancer, and so he wasn't able to come in anymore. What happened after that? I'm like, oh my goodness, that's just terrible. Someone who used to come on a religious basis and had this infectious laugh just stopped coming, and so we found one of the servers found out which hospital he was in, and they asked him. He was actually doing progressively worse and worse, and the doctor basically said, "You've only got about a week to live." And so one of the servers came in and said, "Hey, Hiro, I think David. He's not coming back, and he's in the hospital, but he's really craving dragonfly."
Oh my!
So, the chef and the server, we packed everything up, and we actually set up shop on his floor. Right, we charged in through the hospital, and they wouldn't let us in because it was outside the hours. But we said, hey, look, I mean, like, I don't care. You got to do what you can. It's like, I don't care. Just look the other way. We're going in there and serving and making this food. So we went in there and we made food, and he was like the happiest camper. He couldn't eat that much, but he was the happiest man ever. He passed away eventually, right after that, I think about a week later. But that's truly what celebrate memories. And remember, you talked about Kaizen when it comes to service. When you really know what that looks like, now the employees are equipped with what that value is, and they go out there and try to really emulate that.
Yeah, the power of the stories, I think, is just amazing. And just you telling me that story just now got me emotional, right? And so what you're really saying, and this can go in any industry, in any company, is living that, telling the stories, celebrating successes along with those values. As long as you're going to engage people with their heart, their head, and eventually their hands as well. So.
Oh wow, yeah, that's. You're right. Like it's your heart.
Yeah.
What did you say in that order? What would you?
Your heart, your head, and your hands. So they feel it. They start thinking about how they can be better at doing something, and then they act on it, and
Oh
they
yeah.
perform in a different way. So I think that's a brilliant approach. So Hiro,
Yep.
any final thoughts that you want to share with our listeners before we wrap up in terms of how they can be more successful, and no matter what industry they're in or what kind of, if they're starting a small business and they want to make a difference to create that hospitality, set themselves apart from their competition, is there any final thoughts or advice that you could share with us that would help
Uh,
somebody else?
oh yeah, gosh, there's just so many. I just don't know what's most important. But Vicky, you just shared with me one of my biggest belief. You said, it starts with the heart. Then you start thinking about it in your hand. I just want to borrow that and really expand on that for me too. At the end of the day, it's not about actions. You can't tell your employees to do this and to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell your guests to come in and eat my food.
Right.
Um,
But you
you
want
know,
to.
yeah, and that's the hand part, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, if you just focus on the hand,
Mm-hmm.
nothing works. You got to rewind and get to the mind next.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much the thinking part, the emotional part.
Yeah.
And then, but even before that layer, like you just said, it's your heart.
Mm-hmm.
You got to believe in it. And if you don't have belief, if you don't believe in anything from my cultural values that I shared with you, to if you don't believe this restaurant has anything to offer you, the hand is disconnected from the heart. A quick example is if I want to lose weight, the action is I'm gonna sign up for the gym and I'm gonna start working out, and I'll take another level up and be like, okay, I'll work out 3 times a week. Look how specific that is. But signing up for the gym, going to the gym 3 times a week, those are all action related. And if I write those goals without the up here, and more importantly, in here,
That's right.
without the belief, it's not going to work out. It'll just be a short-term goal that just looked pretty for a few months.
Yeah.
So I have to tell myself that, why do I want to do that?
Yeah.
Tell the stories around why that's important. Reward myself the recognition. And you know what? Once in a while, have a friend that'll give you feedback on how we're doing it, according to those beliefs that I really want to have.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I think we share the same things.
Yeah.
And I believe in those things too.
Great. A lot of really good information. I thank you for sharing all of the stories that you've had with us, sharing a little bit about your values and how you bring that into your company and how you've seen that, thrive and grow over the time. So after a short break, we'll be right back with a little bit more from Ignite.
How do IT pros stay up to date? With the IT Pro TV webinar series, of course. Twice per month, IT Pro TV presents a webinar available at no charge.
And we get started with today's topic. That's right, exploring the dark web with Don Pizzette. Don, how are we doing today, sir?
My name is Vaughn Smith, and today we are going to be presenting ITIL 4 Foundation exam tips and preparations.
We get started with today's topic, the undead of IT, supporting legacy systems. Help me in welcoming to the stage Mr. Adam Gordon. Adam, how are we doing today, sir?
Hold on one second. I got to get started here. Can you talk to
Yeah, I
them
can
while
talk to us.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
So I'm doing.
You can catch IT Pro TV webinars live or on demand at your convenience. See them all. Visit www.itpro.tv/webinars.
Welcome back to Ignite. I had the pleasure to speak with founder and CEO of Dragonfly Sushi and Sake Company, Hiro Leung. On this episode, he talked about his successful business approach that enabled his restaurants to flourish across the state of Florida. He also revealed how he views complacency as the enemy of success and Kaizen as a solution. To hear more inspiring leaders and their secrets to success, follow Ignite on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. From IT Pro TV and myself, thank you, and we'll see you next time.